Hi there. Sorry about the delayed content video for this week. I got behind. This is the week of my fifth year annual review for promotion and tenure. So I've been a little bit busy pulling together all my materials for that eventual evaluation this Friday. But here I am, and I will get this uploaded into Blackboard immediately, and then probably send a YouTube link to it just to alert you. So if you've gotten that first and you've watched it, then you probably don't need to continue watching this one. But the point is, for this week, we are focused on framing theory, continuing that conversation at the media and audience level. I have a couple of related readings to that end. And then connected to framing theory is also priming theory. Couple readings related to that. There is the content exercise. Now that's been ready to go since the start of this week. This content video is the only thing that I had left to do. Just took me a little while to get to it. But you'll notice that not this Sunday, the 15th, but next Sunday, at least for now, November 22, that's when I would like you to submit the second section of your paper. Now, at this point, I'm about halfway through the section ones. I have not had a chance to get to the annotated bibliographies yet, but that is the plan, of course. And if I can't get to them in a timely way where I feel like you would have enough time then to make any changes, any modifications, I may further push this back then to the following Sunday. So I don't know yet. I don't know yet. For now, just plan for it due on Sunday, November 22, that second section. And then next week we'll also have spiral of silence theory. And then I want to talk a little bit more about paradigms and inductive versus deductive reasoning and so forth. I think that'll be a good setup for Journalism 680, which some of you will take in the spring 2016 semester. And even if you don't, I think it's a good graduate level intellectual conversation to have. So then we do more with research paradigms, and that's week 14. Week 15, there's no new content, but that's when your final paper will be due. So any revisions to the first couple of sections, plus then the final section 3, the final section will be due. And so that will be due probably December 6th. I have a feeling that may stay the same. And then the last week of the course for us will be December 7th through Friday, December 11th. And that would be for your final exam, which covers everything from the midterm through research paradigms, which, as I mentioned, will occur during week 14. So that's the outline for the remainder of the semester. So let's get right to it. In your course content, we're in week 12. One of the articles that I'm going to have you read this week is from Robert Entman. I identify him as one of the key figures, key theorists associated with framing. And this article in particular, I think, is important as a hallmark for this theory because of its definition of what is a frame. And so on this page, I draw your attention to this, that frames define problems and or diagnose causes of those problems and or make judgments about those problems and or suggest remedies for those problems. So, I mean, an easy example is climate change. You know, there's clearly an issue there. The problem is that the idea there's more fossil fuel influence in the atmosphere, and so that carbon dioxide input and the fact that we keep pumping it into the atmosphere, well, one could argue, that it's not human-induced. I happen to think that there is a human connection when you got 7.3 billion people on the spinning rock. So in my opinion, yes, there is some anthropogenic influence, and in that case, that's a problem. That's a problem. It's going to heat up the overall temperature of the globe. Some places getting warmer, some places getting cooler. Either way you look at it, there could be a deleterious effect. Well, so there's that frame defining the problem itself. What is climate change? Well, then in media reporting, there's also then frames that diagnose causes of climate change. That's the whole is it human influenced or not debate. that would be a great example of a frame that is an example of a cause for a problem. Then there's the judgments. That would be the stories that go to political figures, that go to scientists and get their opinion about climate change, and the stories that result from that. And then remedies, solutions to that problem. There are stories with frames then about what one individual could do as a matter of self-efficacy toward this problem. There's also frames that talk about what the government can and or should do. So you get the idea. There's, a quick and dirty way to take a real-time example and show how this article from Entman, 1993, still applies depending on the issue that you want to align with the multi-pronged definition offered here. And so I feel like that's an important takeaway from this. You should understand what the theory is. And so for frames, what is a frame exactly? Then after that, remember last week we started talking about the source level. So this would be special interest groups, actors, I think is what we called it in relation to the source level. Well, now we're taking it to a different level. We're talking more about the media and the audience level. So what you have here are a series of independent variables and dependent variables, depending on how you would use this theory in your study. So one way to look at it is that the sources, the special interest groups, the actors representing those special interest groups that use the media as a battleground, if you'll recall that language from last week, that would be an independent variable. And then the dependent variable would be the mediated frames that result from those competing interests using media as a way to promulgate their message. So, what are the frames that result from those strong personalities utilizing the media as best they can to propagate their message about whatever the topic might be? And so the frames then coming out of that will be about problems, causes, consequences, as those actors posit it to media professionals. Then media professionals take their information from their interviews and then they go about writing their stories. And so sometimes then they'll have frames within their story that speak to any one of those four parts that I just talked about. So that's framing at the media level. Then the media frames themselves that go out into the public domain through social media or legacy media, that becomes then in a way its own independent variable when you talk about the audience. So those are the people who receive those media frames as they've been created. What impact or effect does that have on an individual audience recipient of that media frame? How do they react? How do they behave? That then is the dependent variable that would be studied. So in this case, this theory, like I said, there's multiple levels, and because of that, you have different independent and dependent variables depending on how you would use it to study. So what we have here are a couple of readings that you'll use in order to further understand framing at the media level. And along those lines, this is I never can pronounce this guy's name correctly. It's Dietram. I know his first name, but it's S whatever, 1999. This kind of talks about that flow that I was just audibly giving to you. This idea that, when media frames are, an independent variable, then what influence does that have on the audience perception about those certain issues or problems? Okay, then you have individual frames. So the audience has received the mediated frame, they've processed it in their own head, and they've got this formulated idea of that problem. Okay, so, what does the audience do to reconstruct those mediated frames? How exactly then, as they receive mediated content through a newspaper, through a television program, through social media, how exactly then do they turn that around and process it and use it to make sense of that topic? And so that's the dependent variable of the audience level. So there's different flows, and that last part, that audience level, that's this model that I can show you to try to exemplify priming theory. So if you start over here, activation of a thought, okay, that's usually, the activation is the result, it is the dependent variable of a stimulant, like a mediated frame that you find within a media story or some sort of report. Okay, so like in this example, it says seeing a commercial, then you see it, you process it as an individual, and then you have some sort of formulated perception of that commercial. So I mean, if you think it's Veterans Day when I'm recording this video, so I'll do something patriotic. John Mellencamp does a lot of the vocals for Chevy, or at least he used to. And so there's this idea, that there's a certain patriotic essence to those Chevy commercials. So you hear that, you see that, and you start thinking, well, maybe it's my patriotic duty to buy American, to buy a Chevy truck, stuff like that. If we're talking trucks, move away from Chevy. I can't think. Sam Elliott does the voiceover for Dodge. And if you know anything about Sam Elliott's voice, it's really deep. It's really heavy. It's pretty recognizable. But what it does is, I mean, when you see him in the commercials for Dodge, he's rugged, he's outdoorsy. And so if you're watching this, if you're watching this commercial for a Dodge Ram, a Dodge truck, and you're a guy, you're looking at this thinking, aha, okay, this is the epitome of manhood. This is what it means to be a guy, and guys own Dodge Rams. And so what happens is priming theory is all this thought process, as indicated by all these colored circles in here, all these things that are connected. As you see something, some sort of mediated frame, how does that then manifest itself in your own thought process? So this is a theory that isn't so much mass communication oriented as it is cognitive. So, what exactly triggers other thoughts from the original stimulus? That's priming theory. So you're going to be reading about that this week. And then, of course, I have the content exercise down here too to make sure that you've understood some of the key concepts. So again, I apologize for the delay in getting this content video up, but I do appreciate your patience. And hopefully my review will go well, and they'll want to keep me around again. But I am working on your section ones. I'm about halfway through those at this point, so be looking for that. And then as soon as I finish with those, I'll move into your annotated bibliographies. So for the time being, you should still be doing copious research on your topic, and you should be working toward that section 2. The outline for what I want you to do in section 2, that hasn't changed. The only thing that will change is the due date, potentially. And for now, it's still set for Sunday, November 22. We may push that back, and for that, I would ask you just to stay tuned, and I'll let you know as soon as I know.